The Silk Pavilion stood on the edge of the Terran Embassy Gardens, on the shining world of Elizera 9, a planet known for its eternal twilight. The sky was always colored in soft lavender light, and the air shimmered faintly with silver dust. The pavilion was made from living silk, threads spun by engineered creatures that glowed faintly and hummed with warmth. Every strand responded to touch and temperature, like the skin of a sleeping being. Inside that pavilion waited a woman named Lyra Halden. To most visitors, she was just the caretaker of the Silk Pavilion, a quiet human who smiled politely and served visitors tea made from alizarin petals. But few knew she was one of the last Terran diplomats still left on Elizera 9. Humans had arrived decades earlier, full of hope and curiosity, but after trade and politics grew cold, most left. Only Lyra stayed. Every evening she sat by the window where the silk curtains rippled in the twilight breeze, looking toward the horizon. There was always the same ship light flickering in the distance, a faint blue glow that hovered for hours before fading. No one else seemed to notice it, but Lyra waited for it every night. Some said she waited for a lover who never returned. Others whispered that she was a scientist guarding old secrets. But no one truly knew the reason why she stayed in the Silk Pavilion, and she never spoke of it. Lyra's day began with the quiet hum of the pavilion's silk walls responding to dawn's heat. The strands shimmered and soft motes of light filled the air. She moved slowly, graceful and calm, touching the silk as if it were alive. The pavilion itself was older than most remembered. It was one of the first human alizarin co-creations, a structure woven from both technology and living matter. The silk recorded memories in color, emotion, and temperature. It could whisper old sounds if you listened long enough. That was why Lyra stayed, not for love but for what the pavilion remembered. Inside its walls, she heard echoes. Sometimes when the air was still, the silk whispered in faint human tones, laughter, half-sentences, sometimes her own name spoken by a voice long gone. They weren't ghosts, not in the human sense. Alizarin said the silk absorbed emotional imprints, tiny fragments of consciousness from those who touched it. The pavilion was a museum of feelings. One morning, as she walked through the central hall, the silk walls shimmered blue, the color of longing. That was rare. Lyra paused, pressing her hand against the wall. "Who are you today?" she asked softly. The silk responded by flickering with faint images, outlines of a human face blurred and incomplete, as though trying to remember someone. Lyra felt her heart tighten. She had seen this figure before in her dreams, a man in a silver uniform looking at her with quiet eyes. She whispered his name without meaning to, "Jonas." The image vanished and the silk returned to soft gold. But she knew now. The pavilion remembered him too. That night, the faint blue ship light appeared again beyond the horizon. Lyra walked to the balcony, her pale shawl fluttering. Elizera's twin moons reflected in her eyes. The ship light flickered once, twice, as if in greeting. She whispered to it, "You're getting closer." She had seen that same light for 7 years. Always the same pattern, always the same distance. The alizarin said it was just a reflection from orbital satellites, but Lyra didn't believe them. Jonas had promised her he would return, and he had always said, "When you see the blue light, it'll be me." Jonas Calden, human explorer, her partner in both research and love. They had worked together studying alizarin neural structures, learning how emotion could be stored in matter. Their experiments gave birth to the pavilion itself. Then one day he left on a diplomatic mission beyond the alizarin rim, and his ship never came back. But Lyra never left the pavilion. She couldn't. She believed part of him had stayed behind, woven into the silk, whispering through its threads. One afternoon, a visitor came when a alizarin official named Aelith, tall and luminous with skin like liquid pearl. His voice was soft like rain on glass. "You still wait for him," Aelith said, not as a question, but as a statement. Lyra smiled faintly. "The pavilion remembers him." "The pavilion remembers many things," Aelith said gently. "But humans mistake echoes for souls. You have stayed here too long, Lyra Halden. The council grows curious about your silence." She turned to face him. "And yet they let me stay." "For now," Aelith said. "But Elizera is changing. The silk grows restless. It has begun to hum strange frequencies. You should leave before it unravels." She looked at the walls, glowing softly with blue and gold light. It won't unravel, she said. It's waiting for him, too. Aelith sighed, lowering his head slightly in a gesture of sadness. Humans always wait for what they have already lost. When he left, Lyra stood alone again, surrounded by the whispering silk. The words he said lingered in her mind. Humans always wait. But she wasn't waiting for nothing. She knew there was something more. That night, the pavilion began to hum louder than ever before. The silk threads shimmered with shifting light, blue, silver, and gold, like a heartbeat pulsing through the walls. Lyra touched one of the strands and it pulsed back strong and warm. "Jonas?" she whispered. The light spread through the floor, forming ripples that converged at the center of the room. A holographic sphere emerged, flickering weakly. Inside the sphere, fragments of recorded data appeared. Coordinates, human voices, distorted images. It was a message. Lyra leaned closer, her breath caught. The voice that emerged was faint, static-filled, but unmistakable. "Lyra, if you're seeing this, it means the pavilion remembered. I left something for you inside it, a key hidden in the silk's heart. Don't let them take it." The recording broke, then ended in silence. The blue light faded, leaving her standing in the dark. Her hands trembled. Jonas's voice, and after 7 years, he had left something inside the pavilion. Something important enough to hide. She looked up at the silk canopy above her. The threads seemed to glow faintly in answer, almost as if they had been waiting for her to hear that message all along. "Then I'll find it," she whispered. "I'll find what you left behind." Outside, the blue ship light flickered again, but this time, it moved closer to the pavilion. The silk pavilion whispered in tones of gold and blue as the night deepened. The air smelled faintly of silver dust. Lyra sat in the center of the room, eyes closed, listening to the living walls breathe. Somewhere inside that web of silk, a secret waited, one woven by human hands encoded in living matter, hidden from alien eyes. She smiled softly. The waiting was over. Now it was time to listen. The night after the message appeared, Lyra Halden couldn't sleep. The pavilion seemed alive in a new way, like something inside it had awakened. Every silk thread shimmered with faint blue light, the same hue that had surrounded the holographic message from Jonas. She sat beside the central column of the pavilion, her fingers brushing against the living fabric. The silk was warm, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. She whispered, "You remember him, don't you?" The walls answered in a faint hum. Lyra smiled sadly. The pavilion's memory wasn't just sound or image, it was emotion. Jonas had found a way to make the silk store feelings, not just data. That was why his message had survived this long. He had said, "I left something for you inside it, a key hidden in the silk's heart, the heart of the pavilion." Lyra had built this place with Jonas years ago. She knew its structure better than anyone. The pavilion had no physical heart, but it did have a core node, the place where all the living silk strands connected, exchanging signals like a nervous system. It was deep beneath the main hall in a chamber few ever entered. She took a lantern from the table, its light faint but steady. "If you left a key, Jonas, I'll find it." The passage beneath the pavilion was narrow and winding, covered with layers of silk that looked like frozen waterfalls. The strands glowed faintly under her touch. The deeper she went, the quieter the world became. No sounds from the gardens, no whispering wind. Only the slow rhythm of her breath and the living hum of the silk. The air smelled of old flowers and something faintly metallic. The silk here was different, thicker, heavier, full of colors that shifted like deep ocean water. Lyra realized she had never truly seen this part of the pavilion before. At the end of the tunnel, she reached a circular room. In its center floated a crystal orb, half buried in silk threads. It pulsed with dim blue light, the same color as the ship light she saw every night. Lyra stepped closer. The orb hummed softly, reacting to her presence. The silk around it trembled and unwound slightly, revealing faint human letters engraved into the crystal's surface. She read them aloud. "For the one who still listens." Her breath caught. It was Jonas's handwriting. She touched the orb. Instantly, light filled the chamber. The silk walls rippled like water and a warm voice echoed. Jonas's voice, clear and gentle as if he stood right beside her. "Lyra, if you've come this far, then you didn't give up. I knew you wouldn't. She froze, her eyes wide. Jonas, the voice continued, the Elyserans don't understand what we built. They think the pavilion is just art, a symbol of unity. But it's more. The silk can record emotions, yes, but it can also translate them. It's a bridge between human minds and theirs. Between feeling and thought, Lyra whispered, a bridge? The council didn't want this knowledge to spread. They feared it would change everything, but I couldn't destroy it. So I hid it here, inside the pavilion's heart, where only you would hear me. She stood silently, listening as his tone softened. If humanity can master this, if we can truly share emotion across species, then we can end all misunderstandings. Imagine, Lyra, a universe where no words are needed to feel another's truth. That's the key. The message flickered slightly. I can't return, but the pavilion will respond to you. Activate it and you'll awaken the full bridge. But be careful. Once it starts, it can't be undone. Then the voice faded. The chamber grew silent again, except for the faint hum of the silk. Lyra stood there, her hand still on the orb. Tears welled in her eyes, but she smiled softly. He had believed in something beautiful, a way to unite minds through empathy instead of control. It was the purest dream humanity ever had in the stars. She whispered, We'll finish it, Jonas. Together. When she returned to the main hall, the pavilion's silk walls had already changed. Colors swirled through them, blue, gold, silver, patterns like waves of thought. It felt as if the pavilion was waiting for her decision. She reached out and pressed her palm against the central pillar. Activate bridge protocol, she said softly, using the old command phrase they had designed together. The silk pulsed. A low vibration filled the air, gentle but powerful like the resonance of a distant song. The floor shimmered. Light climbed up the walls in slow spirals, then spread to the ceiling, painting it with constellations of living light. Lyra closed her eyes as warmth surrounded her. The pavilion was alive now, not just alive, but aware. Then she felt something unexpected, another presence. It wasn't physical, but emotional. A gentle brush of curiosity, kindness, and wonder. The Elyserans communicated mostly through emotion. She knew their patterns well. But this was different. This was mixed with something unmistakably human. Jonas, she whispered. The presence responded. A wave of warmth, like laughter without sound. It wasn't him exactly, but part of him. His memories, his emotional essence had been stored within the pavilion, merged with the silk itself. The pavilion was now a living bridge on half human, half Elyseran. For the first time in years, Lyra didn't feel alone. She spoke aloud, softly. You're here. Not gone. Not lost. The silk shimmered in gentle blue light. Outside, the blue ship light flickered again in the sky. But now it was joined by faint golden lines extending outward like a net. The pavilion was transmitting. It was reaching out, not just to the orbit above, but to the Elyseran communication web around the planet. Later that evening, Aelith, the Elyseran official, arrived at the pavilion again. His expression was calm, but his luminous eyes carried concern. Lyra Halden, he said, stepping inside. What have you done? The pavilion's signal is spreading across half the continent. Our instruments cannot read it. Lyra smiled gently. It's speaking, Aelith. Speaking? He repeated. To whom? To everyone, she said simply. To every heart that can feel. He looked around. The silk glowed in soft patterns, each color shifting like emotion in motion. Aelith stepped closer, touching one of the threads. His eyes widened. I can feel you, he said, startled. Your thoughts. Your memories. The moment you first arrived here. Yes, Lyra said. It's empathy made real. Jonas discovered how to weave emotion into matter, and how to share it safely. Aelith stepped back, overwhelmed. Do you understand what this means? Such a bridge could erase all boundaries between species. No lies, no confusion. But, he hesitated. Also, no secrets. Lyra looked at the shimmering silk around them. Secrets are what separated us in the first place. Maybe it's time to let them go. For hours, the pavilion pulsed with quiet light, linking thoughts, sharing emotions across the gardens and into the city beyond. Elyserans walking nearby paused, feeling strange sensations of human curiosity, hope and compassion. No words were spoken, but for the first time, Humans and Elyserans shared the same feeling. Not through translation, but through understanding. In the distance, the blue ship light pulsed again. Lyra stepped onto the balcony and smiled. "Do you see it, Jonas?" she whispered. "They understand now." The silk behind her shimmered softly in response, like the pavilion itself was smiling back. As dawn broke, Elysia's twin moons faded behind the lavender sky. The pavilion stood glowing gently, surrounded by calm silence. Lyra sat beside the central column, her eyes half closed. She felt Jonas's presence in every thread. He wasn't gone. He had simply become part of what they built together. And somewhere deep within the pavilion's heart, a faint whisper echoed Jonas's voice, carried in light. "You did it, Lyra. The bridge lives." She smiled, tears slipping down her face. Outside, Elysia's sky began to glow brighter, not from the sun, but from 1,000 points of light forming across the horizon. The bridge was spreading, connecting more minds, more worlds. The universe had begun to listen. The next days on Elysia 9 were unlike any others in its long history. Across the shining lavender plains, people, both human and Elysian, spoke softly of what they had felt. Strangers passed one another in the streets and smiled for no reason. The pavilion's energy had reached them all. Inside the silk pavilion, Lyra Halden watched the living silk glow with soft color. It had become a living symphony. Feelings rippled through it like music. Sometimes joy spread through the threads. Sometimes calm. Sometimes a gentle longing that reminded her of Jonas. Every morning, Lyra placed her hands on the central column and whispered, "Good morning." The silk would hum in reply, a sound halfway between a song and a heartbeat. To her it was the sound of life. The Elysian Council sent envoys to study the phenomenon. They came quietly, walking among the glowing curtains, trying not to disturb the living light. One of them, Aelith, still visited often. He always looked half amazed and half afraid. "This bridge of yours," he said one day, "has changed everything. Our scientists cannot explain how emotion travels through matter. Your pavilion is growing. It spreads beyond this garden now." Lyra nodded. "I can feel it too. It's reaching further, maybe even to the orbit stations." Aelith looked out at the horizon where silver clouds drifted slowly. The council debates every hour. Some fear that it could overwhelm our minds if left unchecked. Others say it may become a new language, one that no one can lie through. Lyra smiled softly. Humans always believed truth should be felt, not spoken. Jonas dreamed of that. He wanted understanding, not control. Aelith turned to her. "And you, Lyra? What do you want?" She looked up at the glowing threads. "I want to finish what we started." That night, she walked alone to the pavilion's balcony. The lavender twilight had deepened into soft blue darkness. High above, the blue ship light flickered again, the same signal she had watched for years. But tonight it pulsed differently, in steady rhythms, like a pattern. It wasn't random. It was communication. Lyra gasped softly. "Jonas." She hurried back inside, touching the silk walls. The threads responded instantly, humming in clear tones. A pattern formed through them, dots and lines of light. The pavilion was decoding the signal. Slowly, an image began to take shape. Not just a hologram, but a feeling that filled the entire room. Joy, recognition, relief. Then the image solidified. Jonas's face appeared, made of blue light and silk glow. He looked older, but his eyes still carried the same quiet warmth. "Lyra," his voice said, faint but alive. She pressed her hands to her mouth, tears spilling down. "Jonas, you're alive?" The image flickered, smiling. "Not as you remember me. The bridge reached farther than I ever dreamed. When my ship was lost, the prototype weave was already part of me. It kept my mind connected. I've been adrift, but now through the pavilion I can reach you." Lyra's heart pounded, but her voice stayed calm. "You became part of the bridge." "Yes," he said. "The bridge is alive and it's still growing. It's touching networks across worlds. But it needs a guide, someone who can help it choose what to become," she whispered. "Me." Jonas nodded slowly. "You. The pavilion listens to your emotions. If you stay connected, it will expand to the stars. But there's a choice. Once you open it fully, you can't return to a normal life. You'll become part of it too." The words hung in the glowing air like a promise. For a long time, Lyra stood silent. Outside, the alizarin sky shimmered faintly with silver dust. The pavilion hummed, waiting. She could feel it, the quiet pull, the invitation. She walked to the central column and touched it gently. Warm light flowed through her skin like a heartbeat meeting another heartbeat. She remembered the years she had spent here alone, waiting and listening. The loneliness, the soft hope, the sound of Jonas's laughter echoing in her memory. Now the pavilion carried that laughter. It carried everything. "I waited for you," she said softly. "And now you're here. But maybe you were never gone at all." The light around her deepened to golden blue. Jonas's image flickered again, smiling faintly. "If you choose this, Lyra, you'll never be alone again. But you'll belong to the stars, not the world." Lyra looked up. "Then I'll go where the bridge leads." The next morning, Elisara's skies changed. People across the planet woke to find faint threads of light crossing the heavens, thin silver lines connecting cities, oceans, and forests. Those who stood beneath them felt strange warmth in their hearts, as if understanding flowed directly between them. In the embassy gardens, the silk pavilion glowed brighter than ever before. Aelith rushed toward it with other observers, stopping in awe. The entire pavilion was now pure light, no longer just silk, but something luminous and fluid, alive with energy. Within it stood Lyra, surrounded by a storm of gentle color. He called out, "Lyra, what is happening?" She turned toward him, her figure shining softly through the glow. Her eyes were calm, full of peace. "The bridge is ready," she said. "It's time." He took a step closer but stopped as the silk lifted into the air, drifting like clouds. The pavilion wasn't breaking. It was unfolding, expanding into the sky. Every thread became a beam of light that connected with the stars above. Aelith shielded his eyes as the entire structure rose slowly, dissolving into silver mist. And then in the center of the clearing there was nothing, only soft grass and the faint sound of humming in the wind. For a moment, silence filled Elisara. Then one by one, people everywhere began to feel something. Not a sound, not an image, but a presence. Lyra's voice, gentle and kind, echoed through their minds. "Do not be afraid. The bridge is open. We can understand one another now, not through words, but through feeling." Across the world, the Elisarans felt human curiosity, kindness, and hope. And far away, on distant human colonies, scientists felt Elisaran calm and beauty. No armies, no fear. Just connection. The Silk Pavilion had become a web of empathy, joining countless minds across the stars. Years passed. Elisara 9 changed quietly. The pavilion never returned, but its light could sometimes be seen across the night sky, faint lines drifting between constellations. Children grew up hearing stories about the human who waited in the pavilion and how she turned loneliness into light. Aelith, now older, often visited the empty garden. He would stand at the center where the pavilion once stood, close his eyes and whisper, "Can you hear us, Lyra Halden?" And sometimes on the wind came a faint whisper, gentle, warm, familiar. Always. Far beyond Elisara, deep among the stars, a luminous network stretched between worlds. It carried thoughts, dreams, and memories. At its center glowed a shape of soft blue light, a figure woven from silk and emotion. It was Lyra. She floated in endless space, surrounded by the voices of thousands of beings. Through her, the bridge guided itself. Not a machine, but a living understanding. Jonas's presence was beside her, quiet and constant. Together they listened to the chorus of new voices, human, Elisaran, and others they had never known before. "This is what you dreamed of," she said softly. "A universe that feels." Jonas's voice, bright with pride, answered, "Yes, and it began because you waited." Back on Elisara 9 on clear nights, the people still looked up and saw the faint glow crossing the sky, threads of silver and gold. They called it the Pavilion Path, believing it carried the voices of those who dreamed of peace. No one ever forgot the story of the woman who stayed when everyone else left, who listened to whispers in silk and who turned her love and patience into something that changed the stars.